hit that. All right. Let me DJ over here on this computer. Hit this. Okay, I think I am ready. Okay. Raising the tone through diet. Now, where did this come about? This came about, it was just a thought that came to mind, I guess. I can't remember how it came about, but I remember the minister, the Most High Elijah Muhammad saying that if you want to raise yourself, if you want to increase or raise yourself spiritually, fast for 3 days. So then just based on that statement, I said, well, there's gotta be a relationship between fasting and the tone scale. And then I just followed the spirit and let the spirit take me wherever it chose to take me. So the actual quotes from How to Eat to Live, one is in book 2, page 3. It says, the wisdom of Allah given to us in the book, How to Eat to Live, volume 1, by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, exhibits the power of the black man's God to take a people in the lowest condition of life, and by the regulation of their dietary habits, raise them to a higher spiritual and physical condition. How to Eat to Live, volume 2, will continue this evolution to higher perfection if we will but hear and obey. So that was the first quote. The second quote says, and this is on page 46, when you fast, it will advance you spiritually. And then the final one says, on page 50, a fast should be from 2 to 3 days without eating food. If we are seeking spiritual advancement, we should fast for 3 days. And then I looked at the wording that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad used. And then I tried to look a little bit deeper into what he said and how he said it, and look at it from the standpoint of present time. And the reason why I say present time is this. Many scientists and doctors now are basically plagiarizing what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad has been teaching us for over 60, 70, 80 years, correct? And now they're making it seem like they came up with this idea of intermittent fasting and eating one meal a day and all this madness. But this is something that we've been taught for decades, correct?
Yes, right. That's right.
Okay. The only difference is today they are providing the science that backs up what the Most High Elijah Muhammad taught. So they're basically bearing witness that what he taught is right and exact, and they're claiming it as their own because they can provide the science that backs it up. But we're not going to let them get away with that. But when the Most High Elijah Muhammad says here, take people in a low condition and by changing their diet, raise them to a higher spiritual condition, I automatically thought about the tone scale. Does that make sense?
Great.
Okay. So we're going to provide the scientific data that supports what the Most High Elijah Muhammad has been teaching all these years. We're going to provide the data and explain the data in such a way.
Uyo lies at 1,500 meters and is normally seen as a summer resort. But it's a fast-growing city, and so traffic is growing too. On some days, the smog is...
Okay. Let me make the admin here co-host. That way I can kind of DJ both of these computers. 1 second. Here we go. And there we go. All right. Okay, we're going to explain the biological part of this and parallel it, because we know the basic dynamics of how to audit a person's mind, correct? we're going to present the fasting aspect in a way to show that fasting is to the body as auditing is to the reactive mind. Does that make sense? Okay. Someone have a question?
Yes, sir.
This is Patricia.
So what you're saying is that, I'm trying to understand what you're talking about here.
Mhm.
So are you saying that our diet is like a blockage to receive the Dianetics to be able to clear us?
What I'm saying is that one, fasting will quicken and facilitate our ability to go up the tone scale. And I'm also saying that our diet, if we're not eating properly, is one of the reasons why we stay aberrated. We're going to kind of link the fasting portion and show how fasting is like, you're going to see how you're going to see that there's changes that will take place in the body during the fast. And it is as if the body is auditing itself on a biological level. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I was reading something about how a person don't even realize that they're allergic to certain foods. So you have this behavior, especially like in children, you keep giving children something, they got this behavior out of control, and they don't realize it could be the food that they're eating, but the parents is not paying attention to what is what they're allergic, it's something they don't really need in their body. So I'm trying to understand that if there's something that we don't need in our diet, then we keep ourselves aberrated, and then we're not able to. I see where it's going. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Matter of fact, some of those chemicals that you're talking about, when you look at the foods that have the colorings in them, blue
Yes, sir.
10, red 40, you might have yellow 1 and yellow 2, monosodium glutamate.
Yes.
In certain drinks, you have what's called exsulfame, you have sorbitol, you have aspartame.
Yeah, all chemicals, yes.
And not only are they chemicals, but monosodium glutamate in particular is called an excitotoxin.
And they have that in a lot of Chinese food, MSG.
Well, they have that, anything that you buy now that's in like the frozen food section, 9 times out of 10, look at the sodium content. The sodium content is through the roof. And that also is going to add to high blood pressure. And another thing we're going to do is we're going to connect Dianetics to the problem book tonight. We're going to connect the Dianetics to the problem book. And it's going to be some interesting things that come up. And I just pray a lot that I'm getting excited just talking about it. I got excited as I was studying.
Yeah.
One thing I do share with the believers is my studying and preparing this is therapeutic. This is like self-medication for me. This is my prescription for me to deal with my aberrated mind. So as I'm studying and putting this together, I'm amazed at the way that Allah shows me how this all connects.
Yes. This is right on time.
So I think we're gonna get something out of this tonight with Allah's help.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So the main part is looking at the lowest condition of life, raise them to a higher spiritual and physical condition. Okay, right there I'm looking at tone scale. Okay, what I'm trying to do now is go back through the messenger's books, go back through the minister's books, and go deeper into the words, because when we talked about last week, we talked about the 3 scientists. The first scientist speaks in formulae. The second scientist looks into the formulae, right? As I go back and when I go back to the beginning and go over it again and pick up the additional data, I'm seeing that the ministers, the Most High Elijah Muhammad's words were such that they were simple words so that everyone could understand them. But contained in these simple words are complex equations. Does that make sense? the more we dig into the messenger's words, we're going to go deeper into the universe. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the first mistake we make, the first mistake we make is one of the first things that's taught in the student hat. One of the first barriers is for the individual that thinks he already knows. So when a person thinks he already knows, then he no longer studies. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So
That's in our lessons.
for some of us, we read Message to the Black Man once, and we probably never went back to it again. We may have read Our Savior Has Arrived once, we might have never gone back to it again. And I'm not saying that I do this, but this is a habit I'm getting into now, that I'm reading the books, and when I finish the book, what am I doing? Going back to the beginning, go over it again, and pick up whatever additional data I can contact. And the one thing I have noticed, I have gone back in some of the books and I have caught things that I missed. And I'm like, man, how did I not see that? But every time we study, our mind elevates on the gradient level. So when we keep going into the teachings, we keep going back, we keep going back, we keep going back, more and more information is going to come from within ourselves. Does that make sense? That is how we line our mind up with the mind of the minister, correct?
Yes, sir.
We have to become the teachings. We have to become the book. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
we become that by, when we finish it, complete it, keep it going. And then there's the specifics of the 3 days. And then we're going to go into the science of what happens during the 3 days and how do we advance mentally on a biological level by the data that has been provided. Okay, so that's where we're going today. And we're going to jump in the problem book and line it with the tech and in our supreme wisdom. So the learning objectives for tonight. So what is the lowest condition in life with respect to Dianetic technology? In the quotes given by the Most High Elijah Muhammad, he talked about the lowest condition of life. And then through dietary law, raise us up spiritually and physically, correct? Well, to raise up physically would, to my understanding, if we're low physically, that means we're suffering from sickness and disease, correct? And to raise us to a higher level physically would mean that we no longer suffer from sickness and disease, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then the same thing on a mental level. We have our aberrations, and if we're raised on the higher level, then we no longer suffer from our mental disabilities, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what L. Ron Hubbard is saying is there's a direct link on the tone scale between where we are on the tone scale below 2.0 and what sicknesses we suffer from. And the sicknesses that he describes in Dianetics Book 1 is exactly the same sicknesses that are described in the problem book in problem number 1, problem 2, problem 5, and problem number 6. Same sicknesses, and he says those are psychosomatic. So that's where we're going. We're gonna line up the supreme wisdom, the problem book, the tone scale, how to eat to live, and the teachings, and line everything up into one. What are the higher spiritual and physical conditions that correspond to the tech? That represents mental clarity and the ability of us to remove sickness from our body. And what is the significance of fasting 3 days and spiritual advancement? We're going to provide the scientific data that will help explain that. What will be the terminal objective? So the terminal objective is, at the completion of our presentation tonight, what should you take away from this presentation? With the help of Allah, at the completion of this module, the student will be able to, you'll have a better understanding of the tone scale with respect to anatomy and physiology. Now, what does that mean? Anatomy and physiology, anatomy is basically the parts of the body, and the physiology represents how these parts interact with one another. Does that make sense? So we're going to show some specifics, and then we're going to show how it works together. Go ahead, Sister Jacqueline.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum salam.
Can you go back to that previous screen real quick,
Yes,
please?
ma'am. Right there?
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Very welcome. We're going to understand the biological effect of fasting for 3 days and how that actually adds data that bears witness to the words and the teachings of the Most High Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and how this affects us spiritually and mentally. Okay. All right. First thing is we want to connect the tone scale to Al-Fatihah. Now, has anyone ever been present when we did this in the past? We connected the tone scale to Suratal Al-Fatihah. Is there anyone that has never seen this before?
I haven't.
Okay.
Me either.
I don't think I have either.
Okay. So we have a connection, because remember, Allah says in the Holy Quran, He's given us a book explaining all things, correct? Okay. Now we know Dianetics is the science of the mind, correct? Okay, so that's another staple, that's another actual fact. Now, if Dianetics is the science of the mind, and we know Dianetics works, that means either the science of the mind is already in the Holy Quran, or the ayat that says, I have given you a book explaining all things is incorrect. Now, which one do we think is true? The science of the mind has to be in the Holy Quran, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because when you go from cover to cover, the Holy Quran, and we go into the parables, and we go into the ayats and the surahs and the histories, not only are we learning about the histories and understanding events in past, present, and future tense, but we're understanding how the mind operates in certain situations and scenarios. So therefore, the Holy Quran, we could say, is a book that goes deeper into the science of the mind, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So now if Surah Al-Fatihah is the summary of the entire book, then it would also make sense on a mathematical level that in Surah Al-Fatihah is the summary of the science of the mind. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's provide some data and prove that, and that's how we'll lay the foundation. So when we look at Surah Al-Fatihah, it says, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Praise be to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Master the day of requital. Thee do we serve, and thee do we beseech for help. Guide us on the right path, the path of those upon whom thou hast bestowed favors, not those upon whom wrath is brought down, nor those who go astray. Now that's Surah Al-Fatihah, correct? Contained in this surah are 3 paths. You have guide us on the right path. So that's the first path, is the right path, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you know you're on the right path? It's because it's the path upon whom thou hast bestowed favors.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have a path where wrath is brought down, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a path of those who go astray. So the guidance on the straight path is the Suratal Mustaqim. Suratal Ladina Amta Alayhim Gairil Mogdubi. So Mogdubi, that word Mogdubi in Arabic is talking about wrath. Gairil Mogdubi Alayhim Walad Dolin. We've all heard that before, right?
Yes, sir.
That word Dolin comes from the Arabic word Dala. And Dala is that path that goes astray. Y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
These 3 paths And the characteristic of these paths line up exactly with the tone scale. Okay. So when you go to the Hubbard chart of human evaluations, and that is the chart that comes with Science of Survival, you have tone 4 through 40, the top part. And on that part, it talks about unknown, theta mess clear, and mess clear. And when it says unknown, it's saying that above tone 40. Now, tone 40 is not the end of the tone scale. Does that make sense? Okay, that's just an arbitrary number he used, but he says tone can go way beyond 40. Okay. Then that level, you have what's called the theta mess clear and the mess clear, and I'm going to explain briefly what those two things are. Tone 3.5 is called a Dianetic release. So a Dianetic release is like going through auditing. You're not necessarily clear, but you are able to have an enormous increase in case gain because of something that has been released or taken from your reactive mind. Does that make sense? Have you ever gone through processing and you had that real hard snotting and crying auditing session where you used that whole little box, but you felt like $1 million when you got done? You had a good
Yes,
release.
sir.
Okay, that's
Yes.
your Dianetic release. It didn't mean you're clear, but you don't carry that around no more.
That's right.
Okay. Then you have tone 3.0, which is a very high normal. Then you come down to tone 2.5, that's where you hit boredom. Okay, the Bible says an idle mind is the devil's workshop, correct?
All day.
All day. So this is like a danger zone right here. Once you get below 2.5, this is where the reactive mind and the engrams click on. So you have tone 2.0, which is called overt hostility or expressed resentment, correct? Tone 1.5 is anger. Tone 1.1 is covert hostility or unexpressed resentment. And then 0.5 is dealing with apathy and grief. And then 0.1, you're talking about the deepest apathy. Okay. Now, when you look at the chart from the Science of Survival, when you get to Science of Survival, for those that have not gotten there yet, if you go straight across the chart, you'll have enough data to basically, I don't want to use the word diagnose, but you'll know exactly where this person is, how to audit them. You'll be able to see the language that they're using, and you know exactly where they are in the tone scale. Does that make sense? Okay. No questions up to this point? All right. So that's a quick summary of the tone scale. But now when we marry this to Al-Fatihah, you'll see that tone 3.0, 3.5, 4, up to 40, that's your Suratal Mustaqim. That is the straight path. Does that make sense? Guide us on the straight path. The path of what? The path upon whom thou hast bestowed favors. Well, what favors are bestowed upon a person when they're at tone 3.0 and above? You have the ability to postulate. You have the ability to bring things into existence, correct? Okay. You have the ability to say kun fayakun, to say be and it is, yes? When you hit that tone 2.5, that's the path where people are starting to stray, yes?
Yes, sir.
That's the Suratal Dalim. And then 2.0, that is your hot zone, okay? High part 3.0 and above, that's your high tone. Suratal Dalim, gray tone. That's boredom. That's why we always have to be about working. 9 times out of 10, and this happened during Ramadan, if we kept ourselves busy, we didn't think about eating, correct? It was when we slowed down and stopped, that's when the snack demon circuit started talking, correct? That's when the ice cream circuit and the potato chip circuit and the whatever circuit we had started talking to us, correct? But if we stayed busy and we kept working, next thing you know, it's time to break the fast, correct?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Even regular days.
And even regular days.
You keep yourself working, you don't think about eating.
Exactly. So when we get bored, when our mind gets idle, that's when we start looking for idols, correct? The red zone, 2.0 and below, that's the hot zone. If we look at it from the perspective of those 7, we talk about hell and it has 7 gates. Here's where hell is right here. This is the hot zone down here. Y'all with me? Can you see how Al-Fatihah lines up with the tone scale?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's look at the Arabic now. We're not gonna go too much into the Arabic word for Suratal Mustaqim and Suratal Dalin. We'll do that another time. But I want to look at the hot zone because that's where we have our issues at. So when you look at the word Mogdubi in Arabic. Oh, I know, before we go there. Tone 40 and plus, he says that is unknown. Okay. So L. Ron Hubbard says that he talks about attention units, correct? And I think on that chart at the top, it might say 1,000 attention units, if anyone has their chart handy.
Yes, it does.
Okay. However, the most honorable the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said the capacity of man's brain is infinite, correct? And that's coming from A Torchlight for America, page 48. So if our brain is infinite, what does that say about our attention units? What is the potential of our attention units? Come on, somebody.
Infinite.
It's infinite. We're not limited by 1,000. So if we just go by the chart, if 1,000 attention units is at the top of the chart near tone 40, that means tone 40 is not the limit. In martial arts, we are taught that your training doesn't begin until you get your black belt. Our journey up the tone scale and the manifestation of our potentials and capabilities doesn't start until we get up to the upper parts of the tone scale. Does that make sense?
Okay.
I can almost imagine that the scientists, the circle of scientists, they're not tone 40. I would assume that they are way and well beyond that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So we're not going to be limited by that. We're gonna use the tone, we're gonna use the scale as a tool, but we have to use the teachings that we have. We don't have a limit to attention units. Go ahead, Brother Wadu.
Sir, I would say that makes absolutely perfect sense because as you yourself know from the higher study of mathematics, anytime you reach access to higher knowledge and sciences and information, then it's on that individual how they apply that information and that knowledge. So you don't give pertinent information to someone who may ultimately be reckless with that information.
Yes, sir. And just as you were speaking, brother, here's the cognition, the idea that came to mind. We only gave them one book of math and science, but there's 59,999 other books, correct? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How many of those other books deal with the science of the mind? We don't know. I can't think that Dianetics is the only book that deals with the science of the mind. Not to become God, not to become a scientist, correct? Y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So a theta mest clear. This is from the Dianetic Technical Dictionary, or what's also called a theta clear, is an individual that is independent of his or her body. A person, a thought unit that is clear of his engrams, facsimiles, and can safely control a body. Now, I'm going to interpret this part in my own understanding, how I see this, because I have not thoroughly vetted or studied what a theta mesh clear is outside of what I've gotten in the Philadelphia doctorate course and the tech dictionary. But to take this definition and apply it to something that is real and tangible, an individual that is independent of their body. This is just my opinion. The minister has said on many occasions he has had out-of-body experiences, correct?
Yes, sir.
So to me, this represents an individual that has gained mastery over their physical body. In the words of our history with regards to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, I remember hearing, I can't remember where I heard this or read this, but he was able to make his devil take its shahada. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Brother Salam, where is that? Where can we find that, Brother Salam? Do you remember where we can find that? He might be moving around.
Let me look for it. Let me look for
Yes,
it.
sir. Yes, sir. So Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was able to make his devil. And if we say that in the modern language, we could probably say his reactive mind take its shahada, meaning his reactive mind said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I can't make this man do anything. So I just have to submit. He is cause and I am effect. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So a theta mesh clear, or a theta clear, to the best of my understanding, would be on one level, a person that has gained mastery over their physical body. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Sister Cheryl. I see you got your hand up.
You reminded me, and I agree with you. And in Dianetics, if I'm not mistaken, or Science of Survival, he speaks that some of us have more volume than others. He was talking about the spiritual entity. So you're saying correct. That's what it reminded me what you just said. Some of us, and I see us as people of color, have more volume, spiritual volume. That's
Okay, praise be to Allah. Thank you. Thank you. So this theta mesh clear would be that around that 40 and above. So to climb a mountain 40 miles high, there's that number 40 again. Theta mesh clear. And then go ahead, Brother Wadu.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to connect what you were saying about being able to have mastery over the body and connect that with 2 points. First, from the minister, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he spoke about how there are times when a person may develop beyond normal strength. For when I think he used the example of a mother trying to get their child from out of a burning car or a turned over vehicle can lift and raise that car, or fight off a massive animal if her child was in danger. The second example of being able to master the body is there are those groups in other countries that go through certain rituals, be it walking on hot coals or laying on a bed of nails, showing that they are able to exert mastery of their pain receptors, their sensory perception, to be able to do those things. So I just wanted to bear you witness on that.
Well, praise be to Allah. Thank you, brother. Yeah, some of those rituals fall under the manhood training and the womanhood training. They have to be able to endure certain things to prove mastery over the physical body. For those that are the movie people, there's a movie called Dune. I mentioned it before, one of my favorites. You have the version that came out in 1984, but the version that came out in 2022 is, in my opinion, it was done better. And there is a scene in the movie where this individual has to go through this test. He has to endure a tremendous amount of pain to gain mastery over his physical body, because he's being prepared to be, in the movie, they call him the Mahdi. There's a lot of, it's a science fiction movie, but there's a great war called the Shihad. His name is Muad'Dib, and Muad'Dib is an Arabic word that means teacher. So there's a lot of parallels between Islam, but they put it in science fiction. But anyway, he has to go through a ritual to prepare to see if he is they call the chosen one. In other words, all of us are going through certain trials and tests. I think I might be correct in saying this. We already have been chosen. We just have to understand and acknowledge our chosenness. Does that make sense?
Sir, when you said that we are chosen, so we're chosen to go through a lot of trials. You said, what do you mean by we are chosen?
Well, everyone here wrote a letter, correct?
Yes, sir.
So, but we're not here because we wrote a letter. We're here because our letter passed, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so we were chosen by a higher power to be here. Brother Jabril has a video, parts 1, 2, and 3, called Self First. I recommend everyone watch the video. And he gives an explanation as to why we had to suffer. And after hearing his explanation, just that alone took away some of the charge of my past, because now I view my own suffering from a different perspective.
Okay.
And just to give a quick paraphrase, but I'd recommend everyone go and watch the video itself, the lecture. We had to go through our suffering because it was preparing us for this day we're in right now.
Okay.
The suffering, something as simple as writing a letter. Many of us know people that wrote the letter, got frustrated and said, "To hell with it." They let a letter keep them from being part of the nation. And had they just submitted one more letter, that next letter might have been the one that passed them, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we went through what we went through. And there's a reason why because all of us have our own story to tell, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And a certain part of our life, and some of us might even still to this day ask ourselves the question, "Oh Allah, why did you allow that to happen?"
Mm-hmm.
There's some of us to this day that we still maybe have a little anger because we don't fully understand. But then when we understand that we had to suffer to get to where we are, and it was a trial and a test to take us through certain levels of purification and reinforcement of our faith. When you lay concrete, you got to let the sun shine on it to make it harden, correct? It's called curing, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Well, our trials cured our spirit, meaning it took us through certain things to strengthen us. We're not where we're going to be, but we're a hell of a lot better than we were 10, 15, 20 years ago, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And a mess clear, The mess clear was a term he just used to describe someone who's clear in terms of book one. Okay, so being clear on that level is not the highest level of clear. That clear is like getting your black belt. Okay, but in martial arts, like I said, getting your black belt, because anything up to your black belt, you're just learning how to do the basics. Okay, you're just learning how to do basic stuff.
That's right.
The real training don't start till you get your black belt.
Mhm.
Okay.
Heavy duty training. Yeah.
So let's look at the lowest condition of life now. We're going to look at the lowest condition of life, and we're going to connect this to the problem book, to sickness and disease, and see how everything is kind of tied in together. So those upon whom wrath is brought down. Gairil Mogdubi. It comes from the root word ghadiba. And it means to become angry, to be vexed, to be irritated or furious. It means to be sullen. And the word sullen means gloomy, cold, or repressed. It also means to be irate. Now, automatically, can't you see tone scale 2.0 below there? So you have in this one word that's describing the whole band below 2.0, correct? Sister Belinda, you're on mute.
I was just reading it.
Oh, okay. I thought you
I'm
were
sorry.
saying something. That's okay. I thought you were saying something. And then I noticed the word repressed. The word repressed and the word suppressed are interchangeable, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you have the word cold. When I saw the word cold, I thought about some layers of the atmosphere are cold and warm, and some are swift and changeable, correct? Okay. Because when you have a layer of the atmosphere that's cold, water represents life, but because this layer of the atmosphere is cold, when the water hits that layer, that it gets frozen, correct? So there's life there, but it can't be used because it's frozen.
That's right.
And then Sister Cheryl, this is in line with what he called the theory of condensation. Do you remember that from the Philadelphia Doctor course?
Yeah, I do vaguely.
Okay, the theory of condensation was as things condense, you go from a gas to a liquid to a solid. What's actually happening is the molecules are being compressed and they're losing their space.
And they're slowing down.
Yes, ma'am. So they're slowing down and they're losing their space. And he says basically a person is aberrated in direct proportion to the amount of space they have.
Now you got, and I remember.
So when you don't have a lot of space, that represents aberration. And then there's one point, and this might take some of us back on the time track for a minute. He says, this is why a lot of our aberrations, it takes us back to the house or the home where we grew up in, because some of us, he says, were forced to, many of us had to sleep in the same bed and we were fighting for space in the bed. Do you remember when he said that?
Yes.
Okay. So the less space we have, the more aberrated we become. And again, that's another reason why when a house gets all out of whack, what happens? Our space is disorganized. How does that affect us mentally? It re-stimulates us, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then when things get so out of whack, what do? We go grab the food and sit and watch Netflix because I'll deal with this. I ain't dealing with it. I'll deal with it tomorrow.
That's right.
Okay. So we get re-stimulated and aberrated. Why? Lack of space. This is why we invite family over, and then when they stay too long, we start to get aggravated because you're invading my space, correct? Okay. So now when you look at, here's the tone scale again. So 2.0 is overt hostility. You have anger, you have covert hostility, apathy, grief, deepest apathy. Aren't these all the same things? that's being mentioned in this the path that wrath is brought down?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So now this path that wrath is brought down, is this path of wrath something outside of ourselves, or is it something that's within ourselves?
Within.
It's something within.
Mhm.
So we're in a time period where the minister says in Divine Destruction of America, can she avert it? He says grief is going to be a tool that Allah was going to use during the chastisement, correct?
Mhm. Mhm.
In other words, Allah was going to produce the conditions and the situations that would cause chronic restimulation on a national and international level, yes? Everyone is going to have to go through these lower tone bands, correct? Everyone.
Yes, yes,
Allah
sir.
says in the Holy Quran, he uses the fire, I'm paraphrasing it, he uses the fire to purify the believers. He uses the fire to destroy the disbelievers. What's the difference between the disbelievers and the believers? The believers are those that took the advice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and studied and got the tech to show how to put these fires out. Those who says, and you go back to study guide number 1, those that said you're in error, you're a liar, you're incorrect, you know. In each of those examples in study guide number 1, those prophets, because what we'll call what the pharaohs and the chiefs of the people said, we'll call that bull baiting for just a minute. But those prophets did not fall for the okie doke. They said, look, this is just the wisdom from my Lord. It is true. I've come to you with sound arguments. My job is only to deliver the message. If you listen to the message and heed the warning, you'll be saved. And if you don't, you're going to be punished. And they just left it at that. And then at the end of each of those examples, it said, for one, it was a cold wind, and for some, there are motionless bodies in their abodes. But the bottom line is, those that listened and took heed, they were saved. And those that didn't take heed, they were punished, correct? Which is another reason why Allah allows, in my humble opinion, why Allah allows the trials to come into our life. The trials are not to punish us. The trials are to get us to follow the man that he has placed in our midst as a divine mercy and as a doorway out of this world. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
All right, okay. So one word represents the whole lower tone band. Can everyone see that? Does it make sense up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now let's look at these psychosomatic illnesses. L. Ron Hubbard says this. He says, what can it do? It can get, now what is the it? He's talking about the reactive mind. It can give a man arthritis, or he's talking about the reactive mind engrams. It can give a man arthritis, bursitis, asthma. I don't know how that J snuck in. That must have been the Spanish part of me. Allergies, allergies, sinusitis, coronary trouble, high blood pressure, and so on down the whole catalog of psychosomatic ills, adding a few more which are never specifically classified as psychosomatic, such as the common cold. Then he says, now this is all from page 65 of Dianetics. Then further down on the same page, he says, if you discharge the content of this mind's bank and the arthritis, he says, discharge the content of this mind's bank and the arthritis vanishes. Myopia gets better, heart illness decreases, asthma disappears, stomachs function properly, and the whole catalog of ills go away and stays away. Okay? So this is what he says in Dianetics book 1. But then he takes it a step higher in the science of survival, and he connects certain sicknesses with certain tone levels. This to me is incredible, because the scientists of today, the books that I shared with the believers from, I think it was either Wednesday or last Sunday, they're bearing witness to what L. Ron Hubbard wrote, and he said this in the 50s. They're providing, and so yet again, to me, it's a bear witness that L. Ron Hubbard met someone that gave him some wisdom that would not be verified until a future time in order to bear witness to the one who gave it to him. That's just my opinion.
And hallelujah on that.
I was waiting for it. All right.
Praise God. Okay.
All right, pass the plate.
I needed that one. You coming?
Now, here's the interesting thing. All these diseases that you see in green, these all correspond exactly, except for one, to the illnesses that are mentioned in the problem book. Problem 1, problem 2, problem 5, and problem 6. Maybe it's just a coincidence. But we know there's no such thing as coincidence. When you go on the Hubbard chart of human evaluations, tone 2.0 is prone to what's called severe sporadic illness. So now on your tone scale, this is column E, medical range. Okay, this is column E. So if you can locate someone on the tone scale, you go straight across. 9 times out of 10, you'll be able to tell they suffer from sporadic illnesses. Sporadic means just random stuff. You know, you ever notice some mornings you get up and your back hurts and the next morning it don't? You know, I'm at the age now, I understand my father more and more, because there were days when we'd be on the couch watching Sanford and Son, and he'd get up and he'd be grunting and making all kinds of noise. I'm like, what you making all that noise for? He says, don't worry, keep breathing, you'll understand. And now I understand. Because if I sit too long, everything locks up. I wake up in the morning now, some mornings, and I'm like, I didn't even work out yesterday and I'm sore, and that's just from sleeping wrong. So I understand it now. Tone 1.5. This is manifested or expressed resentment and overt hostility, correct? And he says that individuals on this tone level, they suffer from what's called depository illnesses. Arthritis is a depository illness. Does that make sense? Individuals that suffer from bone spurs, that's a depository illness. Does everyone understand what that is? Okay, a depository illness, I'll give a basic definition and then I'll let the expert offer it. It's when your body is depositing something, like bone spurs is deposits of calcium. Like from working at the fire department all these years, I started developing bone spurs in the upper part of my spine, and now the bone spurs have gone up into my neck. And that's just from carrying the equipment, years of not eating right, probably some overt hostility or some expressed resentment. I probably cussed too many people out at the fire department, whatever it was. That's a depository illness. Brother Doctor, could you give us a deeper understanding of a depository illness?
Yes, sir. If you go back one screen to those initial disorders, arthritis and bursitis. In medicine, anything that ends in an itis means inflammation. And inflammation is the body's own immune system combating something. We like to think that it's a pathogen from the outside, but there are occasions that the body will fight itself. as you were speaking about depository illnesses, then inflammation and chronic inflammation, or being in a state where the body is constantly having, or the immune system feels that it's always in need of being active, can become its own depository illness, the arthritis, the bursitis, because it's attacking the cartilage and the different synovial capsule and some other medical things inside of the joint space itself. But if we were to aspirate or draw fluid off of that area, we would see a large number of immune cells, white blood cells in there, which indicates that the inflammatory process is taking place inside of that area. So that can be looked at as a depository illness.
Praise be to Allah. So then based on your expert opinion, could you say that as a person is aberrated and their mind is in chronic restimulation, when a body has inflammation, that's chronic restimulation on a physical level?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. Because there's a certain direction we're gonna go with this in a minute. Okay. Tone 1.1, which is dealing with, is that anger? Yeah, 1.1 is anger, correct? Is it anger?
Anger was 1.5, 1.1 is
Covert hostilities.
Covert hostility,
1.1.
thank you. So now 1.1 on column E, medical range, he says that individuals will suffer from endocrine and neurological illnesses. Now, great doctor, can you point out which of these, I hope you don't mind me putting you on the spot, which one of these could be considered endocrine and which one of these can be considered neurological problems based on the ones that are listed here?
Myopia could be considered neurologic, even though it's dealing with the eyes, but the eye is the only external portion of the brain that you can actually see. So by definition, because it's connected to the brain, then it's neurologic. And then the other one, endocrine, let me see here. The stomach function properly could also be neurologic.
Okay. Could allergies be an endocrine problem? Or is that more immune?
That's more immune. That's more immune. The blood pressure.
Go ahead.
The blood pressure could be endocrine because there are factors that will raise blood pressure.
Okay.
Blood pressure is both endocrine and neurologic because it connects to both right at the heart.
Okay.
Yeah, that could be endocrine too.
So there's some that could exhibit. It could appear as one, but be rooted in another as well, because these two could be connected.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Is this all making sense so far, family?
Yes, it is.
Yes, sir.
This is awfully quiet. I guess that means that everyone is just taking a lot of notes. Is that what it is?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And
Down
listen.
at 0.5, he says chronic malfunction of organs and the person becomes accident prone. Okay. So now if you're having chronic malfunction of organs, here's where we might get down to problems with the kidneys, problems with the eyes. Okay. We have these, so we have chronic, So again, as a person is aberrated, they're in chronic restimulation. The point I'm trying to make is sickness in the body is the same as the body being aberrated. Does that make sense? Okay. In Science of Survival, the aberrated person, he calls them in theta, correct? Interbulated theta. So sickness in the body would be considered what he says interbulated mest. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay. So those that, once you get to Science of Survival, he takes it up a notch. So he has what's called in theta and in mest. In mest was a fancy word that describes the messed body, the physical body that's not working properly. In other words, we're talking about sickness and disease. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, I have two things right quick.
Go ahead, brother.
Interbulated, there's no coincidence, but in medicine, when we are listening for what we call bruits, it's the turbulence of the blood flow through a vessel. It can be the carotid in the artery. It can be, if it's in the abdomen, we're looking for renal artery stenosis or something of that sort. But it makes we call it turbulence of the blood flow that causes the sound for us to be able to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that I wanted to offer was chronic malfunction of organs. A word that we would use under emergency dynamics would be septic. A person becomes septic when their end organs or the main organs, kidneys, liver, heart, etc., are dysfunctional. So malfunction of an organ could be looked at as being a septic person in medical terminology.
Now, could you also say when you're listening for the turbulence in the carotid artery or in the abdomen, you're listening for the turbulence, could we also say that you have located a ridge?
Yes, sir. Because
and when you locate a ridge, that's where the problem is, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So there's a lot of terminology that L. Ron Hubbard uses, and we can draw the parallels based on whatever field we're in. You know, brother doctor could take the tech and he can look at it from the medical standpoint. You know, someone else can look at it from another standpoint, you know, based on whatever our background is. What we're doing is we're taking this wisdom and we're putting it in the fine language that we know, correct? Y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
You know, if Brother Frank and Sister Barbara was here, they could take this information and put it in the language of agriculture or farming.
Yes, sir.
You know, whatever our background is, that's what we're doing. We're finding our own individual way of manifesting the teachings, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then when you get down to 0.1, which is severe apathy, you're dealing with someone who's just chronically ill, and they're you can't even access them. They're called another word that he uses called they're inaccessible. They refuse sustenance. You try to give them the tech and they don't want it. And then the beauty of the chart is when you can locate a person. So when you do your case inventory, and you might already know this person suffers from high blood pressure, they might suffer from this and suffer from that, you automatically have a good idea where they fall on that chart. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yes.
And then when you find where they're on the chart and you go over a little further, it tells you what type of tech to apply. Because for someone that's down at 0.1, 0.5, you might not be able to run painful engrams.
Exactly.
You might have to do straight wire first or pleasure moments. You got to get back some attention units, because when you're going after the secondary engrams or the painful engrams, a person's tone is going to drop just a little bit, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But if you're already at 0.1 and you drop, you ain't got much left in the tank. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So that's why that chart, it's a wonderful tool to use. Another thing is you and I can locate ourselves on the chart and see where we are. And we fluctuate during the day. Okay. So now how does that align with the problem book? Go ahead, Sister Patricia.
Okay, you said when you get to that point of the tone scale,
Mhm.
there's nothing in the tank. So is that when that person go into mental illness?
No, they're already in mental illness. They're already there. It's just that when a person is very, very low, like if I don't have the chart right in front of me, but if they're at 0.5 or 0.1, if anyone has the chart handy, please, let's bring some stable data with us. It'll tell you not to pursue painful engrams. It might say pleasure moments or straight wire.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you take a person at 0.5 and you take them through a painful situation, their tone is going to dip. But if you're already low in the tank, if you have a bank account and you only got $50 in the bank, and a bill's coming out tomorrow, an automatic debit for $100, what's going to happen to the bank account? You got to pay a fee now.
Mm-hmm.
Because you just went below what you have in the bank, correct?
Yes, sir.
Same concept applies to the mind. If you take a person too low, you can probably cause more problems.
Okay.
So first we got to see if we can get them up to from a 0.5. Let's see if we can get them up to a 1.5. Sister Cheryl, do you have your chart in front of you? Does anyone have the chart in front of them?
Yes, sure. And I wanted just to tell you to help you. And it's very good that you're going over that, because it's going down here, what you were just addressing. It talks about light processing.
Mhm.
And to sum it all up, that's under assist, which I don't want to go into that. We can go later on,
Mhm.
but that's what light processing is. Assist in locations when you got somebody that low
Mhm.
on the tone scale.
Mhm.
And it says that it says right down here, and you're correcting what you're saying. Did you want me to go over something specific, or you didn't?
Where on the chart does it tell you to start going after the engrams? Is that like 1.5 or 2 or 2.0?
I'm looking at it right now, and it's saying no, it's 2.0 log scan secondary. Yeah, at 2.0, you're correct, brother.
Okay. I mean, that's the beauty of that chart. I mean, the more you go through the chart, remember, Allah says it in the Holy Quran, but L. Ron Hubbard says it in the tech, in the chapter dealing with speech. He says the best index of someone's location on the tone scale is their speech, correct?
Yes, sir.
But there's an ayah in the Holy Quran where Allah says the same thing. You will know them by the tone of their speech. So when we listen to people talk, one of the first things we're able to locate them on the tone scale. And the more we practice, go across that chart, we know pretty much, where it says, and she knows all about you. Well, we know all about that person based on that chart. So we know what they're suffering from. And that gives us a roadmap to exactly how to bring this person back to present time. The chart is amazing. Go ahead, Sister Patricia.
Oh, I didn't put my hand down. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. So let's look at the problem book now, because the psychosomatic illnesses that L. Ron Hubbard speaks about in Dianetics Book 1, page 65. And I remember 65, I think, because Surah 65 is, I think that's called the divorce. Is that what Surah 65 is?
Yes, sir.
Surah 65 is the divorce, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's what we want to get divorced. We want to divorce from these illnesses, correct?
No, I do.
So in the problem book, I'm gonna do a comparison between the problem book and Dianetics and show how the illnesses line up almost exactly. In number 1 and 2, I think, and number 5, it talks about the pulse rate, correct? It talks about pulse pressure. Well, it says pulse rate. Pulse is more than I think for the first uncle, it was 78 beats per minute, correct? And then I think for the wife, it was maybe 80 beats per minute. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're dealing with the pulse. In problem number 2, dealing with the wife, it talks about rheumatism. Interesting thing, rheumatism is found in higher percentages in women than it is in men, based on the statistics that I had read. But rheumatism is something that's found in problem number 2, correct? Then it mentions headaches. It talks about the pain in all joints. When you talk about pain in all joints, what are you talking about? You're talking about arthritis and you're talking about bursitis, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Cannot walk up to the store. Arthritis, bursitis, high blood pressure. So these are all the illnesses coming from the problem book. And then in Dianetics, he talks about coronary problems. Well, coronary problems are related to the pulse rate, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In medical terminology, when you have a high pulse, that's called tachycardia. Okay. He says arthritis. Problem book says rheumatism, but it's the same thing. Rheumatoid arthritis. High blood pressure can be attributed to headaches, and headaches could be a sign of high blood pressure, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Pain in all joints, problem book, arthritis, bursitis, Dianetics. And the same thing for cannot walk up to the store. And again, the high blood pressure is connected to coronary problems. So can we see up to this point how the psychosomatic illnesses of book 1 line up exactly with the illnesses in our problem book?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then if you look at pulse pressure, we spoke about pulse pressure before. Your pulse pressure is the difference between your systolic and your diastolic. If your pulse is, if your blood pressure is 120 over 90, you subtract 90 from 120 and you get what? You get 30. That's your pulse pressure. In our problem book, it says the pulse registers more than 32. In holistic medicine, when the pulse pressure registers more than 32, that's a sign that there's stress in the body. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So pulse pressure, high blood pressure, we're talking about the same thing. In the problem book, he talks about fever. In Dianetics, he talks about the common cold. Can we say that these two parallel one another?
Yes.
Okay. Problem book talks about chills. But now if you look up chills, chills is the precursor, or it is the start of the cycle of action of the common cold. Chills actually comes before the fever. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then when you look at the word grip, grip is in the problem book. I believe it's question number, I think it's question number 5. It could be 5 or 6.
6.
Six.
6. Okay. Grip is a word that was used to describe influenza. So we're still dealing with common cold, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Even though today it's not that common. It's it's evolved a little differently now. Headaches again, we're talking about high blood pressure. And the foot ailments. Well, in the problem book, it says foot ailments, but that could be connected to what's called diabetes or gout, correct?
Yes, yes, sir.
Now, brother doctor, diabetes and gout, could those be considered endocrine problems?
Diabetes, most definitely. The gout is as well, but it's a little bit more obscure.
Okay.
And for the layman to see the endocrine connection with gout, but it is an endocrine problem.
Okay. Okay. So then the foot ailments, that also falls under bursitis, correct? And I'm saying that because the bursa, from what I was reading, you have the bursa could be shoulder, knees, ankles, as well as foot.
That's right.
Okay. And he said, remember, anything that has the itis on the end of it, you're talking about inflammation. Okay. Now, the toothache came up in the problem book, and myopia and stomach illness came up in the Dianetics. Now, I did not see in How to Eat to Live where it talked about vision, but I'm going to go back and go through the books with a fine-tooth comb because I want to see if I can do this and make it 100%. But with the stomach illness he mentions in Dianetics, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad does mention the stomach in How to Eat to Live book 1 and book 2. He says, whatever affects the mind affects what affects one affects the other. What affects the mind will affect the stomach and vice versa, correct? Okay, but now specifically in the problem book, it talks about toothaches. But then I went into the Dianetics and I found out where it says on page 185, on the physical therapy level, anything as violent as surgery or exodontistry in the psychosomatic plane is utter barbarism in the light of Dianetics. He says toothache is normally psychosomatic. Organic illnesses enough to fill several catalogs are psychosomatic. No recourse to surgery of any kind should be had until it is certain that the ailment is not psychosomatic or that the illness will not diminish by itself if the potency of the reactive mind is reduced. So now he mentions surgery, and he mentions the fact that there are some cases where surgery is necessary. So he's not totally against surgery. But what he is saying is before we go cutting things out, we should try to reduce the reactive mind and see if that reduces the manifestation of whatever the illness is, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then when you deal with toothaches, you're dealing with what's called gingivitis, which is bacterial in origin on some levels. And in Science of Survival, he says on page 37, that bacterial infection itself is assisted by engrams. Now, he goes into the whole cycle of how bacterial infections are connected to engrams, but that's something we'll discuss at another time. But he shows a cycle of action of how engrams, some people can get bacterial infection and it don't affect them, and one person get a bacteria and it kills them. Okay, and he's saying there's a connection between the engram, the environment on a chemical level that the engram produces, which makes the environment more hospitable to bacterial infection. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Brother Lukeman, I can also point out
Okay, brother.
direct connection between the psychosomatic and toothache. It's called bruxism in medicine, but it means grinding of your teeth. And so if you have something going on in your mind, then grinding of teeth can lead to potential toothaches, as well as make the teeth susceptible to infection by outside pathogen or bacteria.
That's why it's good to have a doctor on staff, isn't it?
Praise be to Allah.
Yes, sir.
Right. Higher tones in health. All right. Discharge the engram. He says, discharge the content of this mind's bank and the arthritis vanishes, myopia gets better, heart illness decreases, asthma disappears, stomachs function properly, and the whole catalog of ills go away and stays away. Then he says, recently, he realized that some 70% of man's ills are mental in origin, which is to say, psychosomatic illnesses account for a majority of sicknesses. Science and Survival, page 37. Okay, so L. Ron Hubbard says, take your illnesses, 70% of them are mental. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, now, if you look at what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says in How to Eat to Live, he says the fact that fasting is the cure to 90% of our ills is known by the medical scientists, but they do not teach you that. Now, here's the postulate, or here's the thought. If 70% of man's ills are mental and 90% can be cured with fasting, is it possible that we can get rid of some of our aberrated mind by following the prescription of fasting?
Correct.
Because the numbers have to overlap. 70% is mental, 70% of the illness is mental, 90% is cured by diet. Yes?
Yes, sir.
So some of that 70% has to be cured by diet. That's just, that in mathematics, if you want to do a little research, look up something called the pigeonhole principle. Okay, so there has to be some overlap. Go ahead, Sister Peggy, from the Starship Enterprise.
Assalamu alaikum. I
Walaikum
apologize
salam.
for being late. Okay. So if Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that 90% of our ills is known by the medical scientists, but they do not teach that to you. Okay. So that means that there's 10% is not going to be cured by fasting.
Mhm.
I don't know what 10% of that, but I was just not just thinking, but I thought that 10% that he doesn't deal with is definitely could be dealt with Dianetics.
And that would make sense also. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Most definitely. But now there's another part in How to Eat the Liver. He says, so he talked about 90% can be fixed by fasting, but he says 95% of our sickness comes from eating before we are hungry. So now if we take all this data and we look at our illnesses, 70% of our illnesses could be psychosomatic, 90% can be cured by fasting, but 95% is based on the fact that we're eating when we're not hungry, correct?
Yes, sir.
So that little window could be solved, as Sister Peggy said, that little window could be solved by eating at the proper time and applying the tech of Dianetics. Could we say that?
Mhm.
So if we combine the tool of Dianetics with How to Eat to Live, we have the ability to go up the tone scale. Could we agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But our diet has to play a part of it. Why? Because if we change our diet and we change our mental state, then our tone goes up, right?
Mhm.
So if our tone goes up, our tone can't be up, but we're still
I'm
at
about to
those
get
lower
the phone
states
call.
that's manifesting the sicknesses, correct?
Yes, sir.
So one of the keys of getting away from the sickness is to involve ourselves in a way that keeps our tone scale up, correct?
Mhm.
Okay. So the auditing is one of the tools that keeps us up the tone scale, but proper eating, because there are certain foods that have certain additives and preservatives that have the ability to change one's mental level. Does that
That
make
is so true.
Okay? You can't tell me a person suffers from depression, they take a prescription drug, and one of the side effects is that drug is suicidal ideations. How in the world does a drug produce the thought that I want to commit suicide? That's the reason why I'm taking the drug. So now you can't tell me that the additives and the chemicals and all the stuff they're putting in the food now, and with the genetically modified foods, you can't tell me that there's certain foods and certain chemicals that are not producing certain mental states. Does that make sense?
I agree with that.
Okay. So again, if 70% is mental and 90 to 95% is dietary, then if we combine these two tools together, there is a and I was thinking about this earlier. I said to myself, I said, look at everything the minister has endured. I said, now, if his tone wasn't up all the time, he probably wouldn't have been able to make 90.
Right.
I said, so there's a possibility he was able to get to this point because he's not in the lower tone bands. And we know his illness is not based on low tone. We know he was poisoned, correct? That's what we're told. So that's different. But even in the presence of a poison, because his tone is so high, his tone level doesn't permit his mess body to get sick in the same way that others get sick, correct? I mean, that was a thought that just came to my mind today. His tone level all these years is one of the things, by the grace of Allah, that has allowed him to accomplish what he has accomplished. He brought his own, he has his own atmosphere. He has his own tone level. And I would just assume, this is just me, that he's way above tone 40.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a good point, Brother Luke.
Praise be to Allah.
That's a good point, because the Honorable Minister Farrakhan is so on a high level that even when he's sick, he's not even feeling it. If you listen to Brother Ishmael today, Brother Ishmael was going into how the Honorable Minister Farrakhan, even in his pain, he's always teaching, he's always guiding, he's always trying to help people. And maybe that's the reason why the physical body don't even feel it. He don't even feel it, what he's going through physically. And that is so true. That is so true. I just want to share that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, brother. What did the Most High Elijah Muhammad say when we're sick? What should we do?
Work.
He said work. Now, where's work on the tone scale? That's 20.
Is that number 27? 20? Okay.
Tone 20 is work.
Okay.
So if you're working, you're tone 20, then you can't be below 2.0. So when we get bored, what do we need to do? We need to work. Okay, let's marry. Okay, so now, do we see how the problem book and Dianetics lined up?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, in problem number 1, number 2, number 5, and number 6, part of the problem was, if you look at problem number 1, it says the uncle of W.D. Fraud lived in the wilderness of North America and lived other than his own self, correct? So the wilderness represents an environment of chronic restimulation, yes? It's an aberrated environment. It is an environment that is contagion of aberration. Could we say that? So now,
Yes, sir.
if he's other than his own self, that means his mind resonates with the same frequency as the aberrated environment. Does that make sense? So if he's in harmony with an aberrated environment and that keeps him in chronic restimulation, where does that keep him on the tone scale? Below 2.
Very low.
Okay. Look at the wife of the uncle. You think that he's aberrated and she's clear, or is she aberrated with him? She's aberrated with him.
Right.
But then you look at the second uncle, he's in the same environment. So what happens is, just based on looking at the two technologies combined together, one of the reasons why the wife and the uncle and the second uncle are suffering from these sicknesses and diseases is as a result of being in this environment that's keeping them low on the tone scale. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So how do you solve the problem? The problem is solved either by converting the environment from N theta to theta, and or you have to convert the uncle of WD fraud. You have to give him what? You have to give him back a knowledge of himself. So you have to change the environment or you have to change the individual, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because if you change, now we can't change the environment just yet because we live in Satan's world. But now when you look at the minister is in the world, but not of it, correct?
Yes, sir.
And since he has his own atmosphere, his tone level does not convert to the low tones of this environment. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
And anyone that comes in his atmosphere, doesn't their theta get converted to his theta?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay.
That's right.
So when you look at those illnesses that are in the problem book and you look at it through the lens of the Dianetics, what that tells me is that they are in that level of sickness based on being chronically restimulated in an unrighteous environment.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So now let's look, go ahead, Sister Tina.
Oh, yes, sir. Just a little cognition.
Mhm.
That's you're dealing with problems 1, 2, 5, and 6.
Yes.
When you add those up, it's 14, and that's Abraham. In the chapter 14, Abraham, and we are the seed of Abraham, the Black woman here in America. And when you add the 1 and the 4 together, that's 5, the food.
Oh boy, here we go.
So yes, sir, I was just looking at that.
All right, in the spirit of Mother Tinetta. May I be pleased with her?
Praises due to Allah.
Okay, I'm gonna give you a quick, this part should only take about maybe 10, no more than 15 minutes. A quick breakdown of what happens in a 72-hour fast. And then we're gonna compare the fasting of what the body actually does to itself and parallel it what an auditor does when they're auditing a pre-clear. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's like the fast, what's taking place is like the body is auditing itself. And I'm gonna try to show the parallels. But during the 72-hour fast, again, the Most High Elijah Muhammad says a fast should be from 2 to 3 days without eating food. If we are seeking spiritual advancement, we should fast for 3 days. So now, could spiritual advancement parallel with an increase in attention units? Could that be the equivalent of the increase of theta or life force?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now by fasting, if we're fasting in order to gain life force, if we're fasting in order to get attention units, then wouldn't fasting be a type of auditing?
Yes, it would.
Wouldn't fasting be a type of processing?
I didn't hear that word.
Processing.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. Fasting would be a type of processing applied on the physical body in order to gain life force. Could we agree on that?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So now scientists are now bearing witness to the information taught to the Most High Elijah Muhammad by our Savior, Master Father Muhammad. Now, what is the timeline of fasting for 72 hours and the corresponding effect it has on the mind, the spirit? We can also throw in there life force and theta. Okay. So fasting is freeing up life force.
Mm-hmm.
You can agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Freeing up of life force allows us to go up the tone scale. This would imply the more we fast, the more we get away from our reactive mind. This is why, if you've noticed, and this is because, this is what I wrestle with. Diet is something I wrestle with. Have you noticed that over the past 5 years, they've come out with new versions of soda, new versions of potato chips, new versions of, they've increased the variety of garbage. Have you noticed that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I believe there's a reason why they're doing that. For every action, there has to be an equal opposite reaction. So as we begin to thrive and go up the tone scale and go towards righteousness, they have to put an opposite reaction to try to pull us back down. Does that make sense?
Correct.
So since they monitor what we're looking at on our TVs and on our smartphones and whatnot, they know exactly which advertisements to put on our TV and our phone, because they know exactly what our shortcomings are. They track our weakness. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Commercial sidebar for just a minute. I went to work yesterday to work overtime. And again, I told myself, I'm fasting. you already know. I said, I'm not eating today. I said, I went and got my big bottle of smart water. You can see it, alkaline water. I'm trying to get my body alkaline.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting up there, and I purposely stay up in my office upstairs because I don't want, it's Saturday, Saturday schedule. I have my books with me. I'm gonna get my studying done. I have my monthly report to do. I'm not eating any junk today.
Mm-hmm.
I get a phone call from the guys downstairs. They say, Captain, breakfast is on. I'm like, well, I'm not gonna eat any breakfast. It's not a big deal. As I'm walking down the stairs, what do I smell? Now, those who know me know I have a weakness for a specific breakfast food.
What, brownies?
A what?
Brownies?
No. Specifically breakfast.
Oh.
French toast.
Yes, ma'am. You know, French toast. Oh, French toast. French toast is a pleasure moment for me because it reminds me of my dad. Because my father, when I would go visit my father on the weekend, I would get up there on Friday evening and I would wake up Saturday morning and my dad would always make French toast. So French toast is a pleasure moment for me. I walk down the stairs, I'm like, damn it, they made French toast. So I said, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I get to the kitchen, I'm looking at it. The demon circuits were double teaming and triple teaming me. I said, well, I appreciate the invite. I said, but no, I'm trying to stay away from the bread. I'm not gonna, but I appreciate it. Thank you. Grabbed my coffee, turned around and got the hell up out of there. Went back upstairs. No, that's not how the universe works though. Hour, 2 hours later, someone rings the bell to the station. Okay, I'm gonna go down and find out who it is. Someone came by and family member something, they just, as out of gratitude, thanking us for all that we do, they dropped off a large sheet pan homemade cinnamon crumb cake. And I said to myself, I'm like a sugar magnet. I'm a sugar magnet. I said to myself, if I'm ever starving and I have no money, all I have to do is say, I'm gonna fast today. Someone's gonna bring me food. I already know. Needless to say, I did not eat the crumb cake either. I didn't have the French toast. I didn't have the crumb cake.
Praise be to Allah.
Alhamdulillah.
So, but I did fall for something else. I did fall for something else.
Step by step, brother. Step by step.
And step by step. And then I'm saying, so what happened is my demon said, okay, I can't get him with the French toast. Like, oh man, okay, let me come at him with the crumb cake. Oh, can't get him with the crumb cake. Right next door is the Commodore chocolatier. I know that Negro's weakness. Gonna get some chocolate. I'm like, fell just like that, fell. Go ahead, Sister Tina.
I was just thinking, would you consider that that's how Allah is testing you when you make up your mind you're not going to do it, you're going to fast?
Mm-hmm.
The test comes, and what is that? We keep experiencing the test until we pass it.
Until we pass it. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. The minister said it like this. Surah 29, I think is what it is. Do you think you'll be left alone on saying you believe and will not be tried? And the minister says, so Allah's looking at me already knowing, oh, you ain't there yet. All I gotta do is throw a couple of curveballs. I already know, I already know. But this God doesn't know yet. This God, Brother Luqman, has to learn that mastery. And so for me personally, that is my personal trial right now. There's something about being at work and the anxiety that comes with the job. And I'm not making excuses for it, but the anxiety with the job and what I have been through up to these years with being injured and whatnot. And there is a little bit of a fear factor. And I don't know, maybe that anxiety of, the bell can hit at any time. Maybe that's just something that's at the root of, I use food as a means of dealing with anxiety. I don't know. I'm not trying to justify it. I'm just trying to study it so I can master it. But that's what I have to master. You're absolutely right, Sister Tina. So, all right, let's go ahead and land this plane. But I know I'm not the only one, so that's why I don't mind sharing my stories.
No, sir, you're not.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, because I know some of y'all are Krispy Kreme-aholics, and I know some of y'all are some Haagen-Dazs-aholics and Dunkin' Donut-aholics. I already know, so I know I'm not alone on it. But Allah is merciful. Okay, so I'm looking at this as a cycle of action. Okay, a cycle of action. I'm gonna give it a brief overview, and then there's a couple of points I'm gonna deal with specifically, and then we're gonna handle any closing questions, and then we're gonna end it. So what takes place during 72 hours? And Brother Wadud, jump in anytime you feel the need to, brother, to add some stable data to this.
Yes, sir.
So in the first 12 hours, blood sugar decreases, and then your body slowly starts to burn fat. And then you get what's called, you start a process of what's called ketosis. So when your body uses fat, it produces in the body what's called ketones. It's a different type of fuel. Does that make sense? So normally our body uses carbohydrates. They use sugar, glucose. Okay. But like if we eat between 4 and 6 in the evening, and then we go to bed at night, when we wake up the next morning, that's approximately 12 hours, we've almost depleted the glucose. And that's why some individuals feel the need to have breakfast. And it's not the need to have breakfast. What it is your body has depleted the sugar. So your genetic entity. So basically, I'm just saying it like this. And I'm saying it like this because I need to hear it like this. My Satan or my devil wants some sugar. Okay. Some of us, for me, I'm not a breakfast person. 2 cups of coffee and I'm good. Okay. The Most High Elijah Muhammad says you can have your coffee, but don't pour all the cream and sugar in the cup, right? Okay. So after 12 hours, your body has depleted the glucose. Your body goes into the beginning stage of what's called ketosis. Fat, it's burning the fat. Does that make sense? Brother, did you have something to add to that, or are you good?
I'm trying to see at which point I'm going to add what I have to add.
Okay, yes, sir. Okay. So now, when you go from 12 to 24 hours, your body is in a higher state of what's called ketosis. Now, remember in the past when we talked about a building that's on fire, the fire starts really small, then it begins to grow. Y'all remember that?
Yes, sir.
Think of ketosis as the fire that's burning in the building. The fire now is starting to get bigger, meaning your body is starting to burn fat. It's because your glucose reserves are done pretty much. Your body's starting to use the fat and producing ketones. And actually, the body works better off of ketones than it does off of carbohydrates. But then there's a process that takes place that begins called autophagy. The word auto means automatically or by itself. Phagy is a word that represents eating. So the literal meaning of autophagy is self-eating. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So what the body is doing at this time period, it's converting the fat into fuel, and it's finding the things in the body, the molecules in the body that are damaged, or inefficient, and it starts to break them down and use them as fuel. Okay. So I say that to say this. In auditing, what are we doing? Aren't we looking for chains?
Yes.
Okay, we're looking for chains, we're looking for locks, we're looking for things in the body, and we're breaking these things down and we're gaining attention units, correct?
Yes, sir.
So as we're breaking down the stuff on the time track, wouldn't that be the same as breaking down old stuff from the past?
Yes, sir.
And as we break down the old stuff from the past, it's releasing new energy for the present, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this process of autophagy is almost, you can parallel it with the process of auditing the pre-clear. Autophagy is the auditing of the biological body. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, Brother Lukeman, I think this might be a good place for me to offer what I may have.
Go ahead, brother.
So, as an earlier slide said, the doctors and medicine people of this world know it, but they don't teach it. So what I'm going to share comes from a biochemistry book, medical book, and everything lines up exactly with what we're discussing tonight. So I'm going to just read some things very quickly. Fatty acids, another name for ketones, or before they become ketones, are used as fuel whenever fatty acid levels are elevated in the blood. That is during fasting as a result of having decreased glucose levels. Under these conditions, a decrease in insulin takes place. I'm going to stop there and just say that that's important because we're finding that there's a syndrome called metabolic syndrome that's highly connected with type 2 diabetes, in that the body becomes desensitized to, for lack of better words, to the insulin. And so diabetics, type 2 diabetics, their body cells don't respond to the insulin. So anything that decreases insulin in the system is a good thing. I'm going to fast forward. Fatty acids begin to increase in the blood approximately 3 to 4 hours after a meal, and then progressively progressively increase with time of fasting up to approximately 2 to 3 days. Not by coincidence, that's what's written in the book. After 2 to 3 days, ketone bodies rise to a level that enables them to enter the brain. So in this book, they don't describe the benefits of ketone bodies as opposed to glucose. There's a chart. I don't know if you can see it clearly. I'll try to put it on my camera. I'm not gonna, maybe. That just kind of shows how the body operates in homeostasis, which is balance. So there's not the need to eliminate glucose completely, but we rely on it too much. We're out of balance with how much glucose we use. And fasting is a way that regulates the glucose by introducing this alternate fuel source, which is the ketone bodies. Lastly, tissues that use ketone bodies, skeletal muscle, the heart, the liver, and many other tissues use the fatty acids, which are the precursors to the ketone bodies. That just means molecules that are made before the ketone body is produced. But these organs use the fatty acids as their major fuel during fasting. And then the other tissues, such as the brain, uses ketone bodies to a greater extent. So I believe, and maybe some future research by myself will find out the net benefit, the overall benefit of the ketone body specifically for the neuronal function as opposed to glucose. But the book itself does not give that specific information. So the timing, the 2 to 3 days, that's already in their biomedical, biochemistry books. And we know the minister is told or asked the question, will a man rob God? And so we know that they will steal the information that our Savior came and gave for us and the benefit of all humans. That's all I wanted to offer on that. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you very much. You had mentioned the word homeostasis. That means balance, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, how would we say that in Arabic? The word is salam. So when the body's in a state of homeostasis, it's in a state of Islam. It's in a state of salam. It's in a state of peace. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. That ties right in with the Dianetics.
Yeah, brother.
Diminishing charge and bringing peace.
Yes, sir.
To the mind.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that info. Now we got 36 hours. At 36 hours, you have ketosis, you have autophagy, but then you have a process. You have the body is producing something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. And what this chemical is, they consider it to be fertilizer for the brain. Okay, I'm gonna go a little deeper into it, but this is the basic outline, but I'm gonna touch on it a little bit deeper. So 36 hours, BDNF. So now we're at the 2-day mark. Ketosis is still going. Autophagy is like our body's going through a 3-day process of auditing to remove these biological engrams and biological locks and biological secondaries. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Our body is being audited. And then at 72 hours, our body begins to produce stem cells. Now, Brother Wadu, Brother Doctor, what is the importance of stem cell production in the human body?
So think of the stem cell as being those cells that a newborn or that a conceived fetus has, because a fetus or an embryo, when it's first conceived, every cell of that developing life, that fetus's body has to come from the initial cells. And it's only 2 at the beginning, then 4, then 8, then 16, and then it just increases exponentially from there. But all of the cells of the body came from those initial 2 cells. And so stem cells contain all of the genetic information that will service every cell of the body. That's a good way for me to say it.
Okay. Praise be to Allah. Is this making sense up to this point? Are we having some good flow, good case gain up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now fasting, auditing of the body. So I'm gonna just do a little detail right now. 0 to 12, day 1, 0 to 12 hours. Okay, blood glucose decreases, ketosis begins. Autophagy. Autophagy is biological auditing. Okay. So the cellular debris that's being cleared out is parallel to the mental debris that's cleared out during the process of auditing. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The law of correspondence says as above, so below. The same rule that applies to the mind in processing, the same principle is going to apply to the physical body during fasting. Now, autoimmune responses. These are responses that actually cause inflammation. So inflammation on the level of the mind, we call that restimulation, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
So contagion by aberration, to be restimulated, to be stuck on the time track, that parallels, that on a mental level will parallel to the physical body of what's called inflammation. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now, brother doctor, what can you tell us about autoimmune responses with regards to sickness of the physical body?
So the autoimmune is, as the name says, it's from the immune system, and we want that system to be active against outside invasion by pathogens, viruses, and bacteria. It can get thrown out of balance and begin to attack healthy cells. And that's where you get autoimmune disorders and diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, where the body's own immune system, and there are different mechanisms as to why we think this happens, why the Western medicine feels that it may happen, but it begins to see the body that the immune system is operating within as though it's the enemy, and it attacks it as though it's an outside pathogen. And it also has to go through this same clearance process, which the fasting, after the cells have lived for so long, they are supposed to have a programmed cell death, which is called apoptosis, where they just, die and get recycled again, like you said, with the pieces that come off of that destructed or destroyed cell. But that's where autoimmune comes in.
Okay, so as a person's reactive mind attacks the pre-clear on the mental level, you're saying the autoimmune response is the body attacking itself on a biological level.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If that's on one level.
On one level.
The other way to, unfortunately, they don't have separate words to describe separate concepts. They have
Right.
one word. So autoimmune could just also mean the activation of the immune system.
Right, right.
That it's attacking itself, but just its own activation.
Matter of fact, is lupus considered an autoimmune?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So this is like removing the locks that keep systems aberrated. So the inflammation of the physical body is like the locks in the mind. Does that make sense?
Can you say that again?
So removing the locks, when we're auditing, we're removing the locks as far as processing the pre-clear. That would be the same as removing the inflammation in the body.
Okay.
So we're paralleling the process of what's happening in the mind of auditing, but we're drawing a parallel that fasting actually is like auditing the body. Does that make sense?
Brother Lukeman?
Yes, sir.
I also believe I can kind of connect how fasting and the auditing of the body ties with auditing at the mind simultaneously, if we all just reflect on, and I'm doing this for myself, when I am fasting, all of the internal thoughts that come up in my mind that want me to not continue to fast, that I have to do battle with those internal thoughts. To where did that come from? I know I wanted to fast. Why am I thinking about whatever my weakness is? Where is that coming from? So it's like I'm also getting, fighting my reactive mind at the same time that my body is going through its own auditing, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, because the reactive mind is trying to survive as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
So the reactive mind isn't surviving unless you're below 2.0, correct?
Yes,
so not
sir.
only does the reactive mind want you to stay aberrated, the reactive mind wants us to stay sick. Because the reactive mind, once we're out of that tone band, we begin to heal the body. We're no longer aberrated. What are we doing? We're killing the reactive. The reactive mind wants to survive as well. That's L. Ron Hubbard said that's the fundamental principle of survival, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
And that includes the reactive mind, or further in the tech, he calls it the genetic entity. We can call it the devil in self that we have to murder, but the bottom line is we're all saying the same thing. But the devil can't exist, the reactive mind can't exist unless we stay below 2.0, and then we stay sick. Because remember, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, spiritual death leads to mental, I'm paraphrasing it, spiritual death leads to physical, and then eventually it leads to actual death, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead, Sister Tina.
Well, Brother Wadu just said, that's an issue with me. What Brother Wadu just said, when I make up my mind, I'm going to fast, because it has become difficult. So, so is that, okay, when I make up my mind, I'm going to fast, and then all these thoughts come in as to why I can't, why I shouldn't. So is that like, and then I feel it in my body feels hungry, you know? So is that somewhat of a lock? What is that? A lock? Would that be considered a lock? The thoughts that come into my mind that's tricking me into not fasting, are those locks?
That's the whispering of the slinking devil who whispers into the hearts of men. Because if you notice, all the foods that you cheat on, you don't say, I'm gonna fast, and they say, oh, you know what, I'm gonna break my fast and go get some broccoli. No, You don't go after nothing healthy, do you?
Yes, I do. That's how I eat my bean soup.
Well, bean soup is different. Bean soup is different. Well, I'll speak for me. I'll speak for me. When I get tempted, and when that little whispering, the slinking devil whispers, it's usually stuff that I know I shouldn't be eating.
Okay. But I just eat because I'm telling myself I'm hungry. Okay. Okay. I get through the second day. But then getting to the third day, completing the third day. So I tell myself, okay, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, if you do 2 days, that's good. So I stop at the 2 days.
And so you listen to the whispering of the slinking devil. That's called justified thought. It's called a service facsimile. And in the language of Islam, that's called deceptive intelligence.
Yeah. So
we say, okay, because now we'll use the teachings as the loophole. Well,
yeah,
because here's a loophole. Okay, I'm fasting today. I go to work. Captain, you gonna eat with us? Well, the teaching does say that you're supposed to decline fasting, because if you're offered food, it's considered to be this. So so you can always fast them. So yeah, we justify doing certain things. Salam. But we have to say, but then the lesson says what? Why did God make devil? To show forth and prove that he's all wise and righteous, that he can make a devil, which is weak and wicked, give him power to rule the earth for 6,000 years, and then destroy him in one day without falling victim to the devil's civilization. So we got to apply that every day. So when I say I'm going to fast, like tomorrow, I have to go back to work. I already know the last thing I'm going to say is I'm fasting tomorrow. Now, the funny thing is, if I say I'm not fasting, there will be nothing nowhere in the firehouse. But as soon as I say I'm going to strive not to eat tomorrow, it's going to be like Baskin & Robbins 31 different flavors of ice cream in the freezer. I already know it. But then again, how can one prove that they're God unless they defeat their devil? And it goes back to what Sister Teen was saying earlier. We keep facing our same problem over and over and over again until we gain mastery over it.
Yes.
I got Sister Tina, I got Brother Martin, and then I got Sister Peggy. Go ahead, Sister Tina.
No, I'm good. I have to put my hand down.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, no problem. Brother Martin.
Alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Far as diet, just the word, the concept, the thought, the idea. Why can't we adopt lifestyle change?
Change the language, yeah, right?
Lifestyle change. I'm making a change in my lifestyle. And I think we will digest it and not regurgitate it as quickly. So like,
yes, sir. Just change the language, because when I'm saying diet, to me, I'm dying to eat. That's what it sounds like to me.
Right, because we get on the diet, we get off the diet, we fall off the diet. But if it's a lifestyle change, if it's now our way of life, if fasting is now our way of life, I think that brings a different taste for the taste bud.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And then I think,
go ahead, brother.
And then I think when we, after disciplining ourselves and bringing ourselves under subjection, opposed to the word cheat, I think we should look at it from a perspective of now treating ourselves from accomplishing, instead of looking at it as being defeated. I wasn't successful in my lifestyle change for 3 days. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam. Yes, sir. That makes sense. Accept it as a win. Because if we look at it, so even if we do 2 days, that's still a win. Right.
It's progress.
It's progress.
Slow progress is better than no progress. And then after we successfully complete the 2 days consecutively fasting, then move on to the 3 day.
Yes, sir. We try to fast for 40 days, and then when we don't make it 2 days, we say, "Oh hell, I ain't fasting no more." Well, you try to do
Right.
you try to fast 40
Putting,
days and you can't do 2 or 3.
right. Putting
Do 2
the
first.
extra weight on our minds.
Yes, brother.
Stress that's gonna trigger us to go eat negative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Brother Martin.
Yes, sir.
Islam, Sister Peggy.
Now, say one more time why God created devil, and then I have the question. So I have to hear
Okay,
that.
in Lost Found Muslim lesson number 2, question number 38. And I hope I hope I'm saying this verbatim. The question is, then why did God make devil? And the answer is to show forth and prove that he's all wise and righteous, that he can make a devil, which is weak and wicked, and give the devil power to rule the earth for 6,000 years, and then destroy the devil in one day without falling a victim to the devil's civilization. Otherwise, to show forth and prove that Allah's God always has been, always will be. That's the lesson. So
Okay.
So go ahead.
So my question is, to whom does he have to prove that?
We got to prove it to ourselves.
That he has to prove that to himself?
Right. We all have to prove to ourselves who we are. See, it's easy to say I'm God. It's easy for someone to do martial arts and say, yeah, I'm a martial artist. Okay, get in the ring to see if you got some skills. It's easy for someone. I've met people before say, yeah, I'm good at chess. Okay, let's get behind the board. Come to find out, they're terrible. But for some of us in our own mind, we have a certain self-image, and that's why the minister explained it like this. Do men think that they'll be left alone saying they believe and will not be tried? See, all of us say we believe. We're believers. But when we go through, if we're believers, then that means we believe in what the Most High Elijah Muhammad has taught us. But then when we go through the fire of trial, we'll realize that our belief is not as strong as it should be. And I'm using myself as an example, because if I was really a believer the way I should be, I would be on my 1 meal a day. I would be following the example of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. But if we were really believers, he wouldn't have to give us a book called Closing the Gap. There would be no gap. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, but what I'm not understanding is, so if he's God, and this is before the devil, so everyone is living their lives, and people don't know that much about God before he revealed himself this time. So he wouldn't have to prove it to us.
You're saying God would have to prove he's God to us?
No, would he? Because we don't even know about him. And before the devil came, so is he proving it to us?
Yes. So God is proven, if I'm understanding you correctly, God is proving who the devil is on the outward level. We also have to understand who the devil is individually.
Oh, okay. So
see, the lessons, you can look at the lessons on many, many different layers.
Okay.
But once the devil in here has been rectified and we overcome this one, the one on the outside don't matter no more. And that's where the Most High Elijah Muhammad said, you can wrap him around your pinky, you wouldn't even know it's there. So there's certain things, once we've mastered them inside, outside won't affect us. And the only reason why the outside affects us is because we have not mastered what's on the inside yet. But we are better than what we were 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. At least I know I'm thankful to Allah, because I can remember the type of person I was 30 years ago. And if I stayed on that path, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Can I share something, Brother Lukman?
Hey, go ahead, Brother Salam.
You know, the question that she raised in regards to why God gotta prove himself in regards to proving that he can overcome the devil in one day. And significant in regards to that, I can say, in the Quran, Allah tells us that he is so merciful, he has bestowed mercy on himself. And you would ask the question, why would God give himself mercy? Yeah, that's a good question, right? Why would God give himself mercy? Inside of each and every one of us, we bear witness, it's God, right? The inner self or the inner me is God. But we don't know that when we don't have knowledge of God. When we was lost from the knowledge of self, we had to learn that from Elijah Muhammad, that the inner me or the inner self is the God within me. But also inside of the inner me, the inner me is the enemy of God. It's the deceptive intelligence within us that we have to wrestle with. In order to prove ourselves that we're worthy to master the self or master the the devil inside of self or the enemy within inside of self, we have to begin to engage that, what we're talking about, that fasting period, to be cognizant that we in a fight. When you said I'm a fast tomorrow and you know that there's going to be obstacles in your way, that's the fight. To look at what's before you and challenge it. That's the only way we can overcome the enemy, enemy, in order to understand the inner God within self, because God dwells within you as you. But we don't know that until we get acquainted with ourselves. Is that making sense? I'm trying to.
No, it makes sense.
I'm trying to show us that we at war with self.
With ourselves.
Constant war. And this war is on a daily basis. It's constantly we're waging war. And fasting helps us to become intuitive. Because, when you're fasting, you're more sensitive. You're more intuitive to things around you. So that's why Mama said 95% of our cures can be by fasting. So when we don't got nothing inside of us, we're becoming in touch with ourselves. If I'm making any sense.
That makes sense. You good on that, Sister Peggy?
Yes, thank you.
Praise be to Allah. All right, let's land this. I just realized what time it was. So now, between 12 and 24 hours, what's called neuroinflammation decreases. Now, what's the significance of neuroinflammation or inflammation of the nervous system? Inflammation of the nervous system is connected to anxiety. There have been some studies that show that when a person is going through anxiety, they're actually suffering from inflammation of the nervous system. And there's certain chemical, I can't remember the name of the chemicals. Brother Wadud, are those chemicals called cytokines?
There are cytokines.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's certain chemicals called cytokines that cause inflammation of the nervous system. You ever get that feeling where you just feel edgy, like you just want to reach out and touch someone, if you know what I'm saying? You just feel edgy. That's it. That's anxiety, but on a biological level, that's an inflammation of the nervous system. Okay, I'm gonna try to go kind of quick to bring this in. BDNF,
Brother Lukman. So what creates the inflammation of the nerve system?
Wait, say it again.
What is creating the inflammation of the nerve system?
Our diet. So during the fasting, this inflammation is actually decreasing.
Too much sugar?
Yes, too much sugar is, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Sugar is one of the worst things. There's a book called Sugar Blues. That's an excellent book to read. The sugar it causes inflammation of the nervous system, definitely. Yes, ma'am. So now you have BDNF and you have a chemical called HGH. And both of these are connected to the reversal of aging and the increase in thinking ability. Okay. So on the auditing level, this is like getting attention in the back. Does that make sense? Okay. At 48 hours, autophagy is continuing. So you're taking stuff that's not being used, proteins, and that are damaged, and what the body's doing is deconstructing them and reconstructing them in a way that they can be used for food. So really, your body's taking the stuff that's not serving a purpose and converting it to a food source. And what happens is when you get around 48 hours, typically your body gets to a point where you actually begin to lose your appetite. Now, this might happen with different people at different times, but typically they say 48 hours, you begin to lose your appetite. I know for me, if I get past 24 hours, then I'm good. I get to the point where I have no desire to eat. But the first 24 hours, that's walking straight through hell right there. That's straight.
That's right.
It removes particles from the body that contribute to PTSD. PTSD is not just a mystery god. Post-traumatic stress disorder has a chemistry to it. And as you fast, you remove the chemistry that attributes or is contributing to PTSD. Now, 72 hours, what happens? Reversal of chronic diseases. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says in How to Eat to Live, specifically with regards to sugar diabetes, he says what? Sugar diabetes can be reversed, right?
I bear witness.
Okay, sugar diabetes can be reversed. During this time period, immune function increases, and some studies say that almost 100% of the immune system is replaced. In the 3-day fast, you almost get a totally brand new immune system. Stem cells are being produced, which help to produce a new body, and the HDH, the BDNF, and the stem cells actually cause the body to reverse the aging process. So the body begins to look younger. Does that make sense? And we were told that we will go back into the age of 16, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So real quickly, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Changes in BDNF expression are associated with both normal and pathological aging, and also psychiatric disease, in particular in structures important for memory processes. As BDNF increases, this is called the fertilizer for the brain, certain psychiatric disorders will begin to diminish, and memory will begin to increase. Now, how do you increase? Because if we can understand how to increase BDNF, wouldn't that be like the solution to the problem? Y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
We want to reverse the aging, increase our memory, and get our body back.
Yes.
Okay, here's some of the things you can do to increase BDNF. And all of these are already in How to Eat to Live. It's already there. The messenger already gave it to us. Drinking coffee. Wow. And this is one of the reasons why the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said drinking coffee in between meals is something we can do, correct? Just don't pour all the cream and sugar in there, yes?
That's what he said.
Did you know that the pineal gland produces a chemical that stimulates spirituality? And there's another chemical that turns off the pineal gland, and it produces a chemical called monoamine oxidase. But guess what coffee does? Coffee blocks the monoamine oxidase, the chemical, which during a 3-day fast with coffee, it increases the potential of having spiritual experiences. Does that make sense? Another thing is consume protein. Go ahead, Brother Wadu.
Just to maybe help us all out as I try to help myself when I'm fasting, I found that, and it may link with why the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad had the naturally decaffeinated coffee, because I found that the caffeine is an appetite stimulator. So it's hard to drink coffee with the caffeine in it, stimulating the appetite while on the fast at the same time. So if we must have coffee, then decaf may be the way to go for some of us. Some of us, you know, may be able to regulate the caffeine intake with the fast, but if not, then maybe decaf would be the way to go.
Now, what is one of the ways we were taught to fix the coffee to make it better for us?
The egg.
Egg coffee. The egg coffee. It's something about using the egg and the shell. I don't know the whole science behind it, but now that we're talking about it, it means I have to go study it because I want to know how the process is. But something about the egg and the eggshell, it has an effect on the coffee that does just that.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I wanted to.
Go ahead, Sister Peggy.
Here, why the most honorable Elijah Muhammad was very specific. He said water and coffee, but he didn't say tea. This to me is not a point of argument for anyone if I'm talking to them about how to eat to live, but he doesn't mention tea.
No, he doesn't.
No, he does not mention tea.
That's right.
So there must be something in the coffee, even though tea has caffeine, but there's something specific about the coffee. Just as you said, and if you just read what he said, because he didn't say anything about tea. Might be easier for some people, but tea upsets my stomach if it gets too strong.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that. Go ahead, Sister Tina.
The recipe that I have, which I got out of the Muslim cookbook, the recipe that I have for the egg coffee, it also has a 1/4 teaspoon of salt.
Okay. I might go make myself some egg coffee tonight.
Decaf.
Yeah, right. Now, what else increases BDNF? Reducing sugar. Wow, all the things that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad already told us to do is already there. We already have it. We already have it. BDNF increases when you fast anywhere from 2 to 3 days, in harmony with the technology, in harmony with the medical books that Brother Wadu just gave to us tonight. We already have the solution to our own problem. We just got to do it. We just got to follow instructions. Then he says, increase BDNF, consume fish, olive oil, and certain fruits. Again, everything that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad already told us to do. Conclusion, really, How to Eat to Live is a BDNF manual. And for human growth hormone, it says emerging data indicate that growth hormone therapy could have a role in improving cognitive function. Going up the tone scale, here we go. Growth hormone replacement therapy in experimental animals and human patients counteracts the dysfunction of many behaviors related to the central nervous system, eliminating anxiety. I seek thy refuge from anxiety and from grief, right? Tone scale. Improvement in cognitive function is equivalent to going up tone. Summary, and here's where we ended. The tone scale and the 3 paths in Al-Fatihah correspond, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The illnesses mentioned in the problem book are equivalent to those mentioned in Dianetics as psychosomatic, correct?
Yes, sir.
Auditing along with the proper diet can reverse and remove the elements that produce an aberrated mind. Could we agree on that?
Yes, sir.
The 3-day fast can produce higher tone levels. Yes?
Yes, sir.
And that means a 3-day fast is a type of processing. The dietary law that has been given to us has been plagiarized by modern scientists. In doing so, they are bearing witness to the truth that has been given to us. Can we agree to that one?
Yes, sir.
All right. So it ends. Any final questions, thoughts, concerns, comments, or corrections before we end? Sister Tina, did you have something, or is that your hand up from before?
Yes, sir, I do. Please forgive me. I have a correction. When I said a 1/4 teaspoon, I said, wow, that sounds like a lot. So I went to go look at my teaspoon that I use. It's only an eighth. One teaspoon.
You know, when you said 1/4 teaspoon, in my mind, I was thinking, I was like, that's a lot of salt, but you know, if she read it, but okay, 1/8.
1/8, yes.
Okay. All right. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, family. Anything in closing before we I pray a lot. I mean, did we get a lot out of this and see the parallels between the Dianetics and how to eat to live and
Excellent.
tone
Yes,
scale?
sir.
Yes, sir.
Any questions? We got case gain? Did we get case gain tonight?
Yes,
Yes, we
sir.
did.
Okay.
My head is heavy.
Praise be to Allah. Okay, family. If do we have any final questions or comments? If not, we will go ahead and close it out. And if you have any ideas for future Zoom meetings, if you have any concepts that you want to see covered, you can always just send me an email. When I get an email, that becomes an assignment. And I love studying to find ways to marry the supreme wisdom with the supreme technology. So if there's nothing else, then we will go ahead and close it out. Brother Salam, if you would do us the honors, please.
Yes, sir. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Assalamu alaikum.
Happy Mother's Day, family.
Alaikum salam. And happy Mother's Day, everybody.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Um,
Alaikum.